Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the public scoping meeting for the proposed Golden Currant Solar Project. Thank you all very much for joining. We are very appreciative of having you all here and that you are able to participate this evening. My name is Caitlin Gillerin, and I am a contractor for the BLM. I will be facilitating the meeting tonight. Tonight's scoping meeting will include an introduction by the acting field manager for the Las Vegas field office, Katrina Williams, followed by introductions of the participants from the BLM Southern Nevada District and Panorama Incorporated, the third-party contractor facilitating tonight's session. After introductions, Jessica Heaton, the BLM project manager, will present on the proposed Golden Currant Solar Project and provide a short overview of the BLM process. Following the presentations, there will be a question and answer session facilitated by Panorama Environmental with responses from the BLM, and then we will open up the forum for public comment. Then we'll close out for the evening. This meeting will be recorded and the video will be posted to the project information webpage posted in the chat. Now we will turn it over to Katrina Williams, the acting field manager for the Las Vegas field office, for an introduction and an overview of our presenters and other participants for this evening's scoping meeting.
Thank you, Caitlin. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the public scoping meeting for the Golden Currant Solar Project. My name is Katrina Williams, and I'm the acting field manager for the BLM Las Vegas field office, and I wanted to thank you all for joining us tonight. The Golden Currant Solar Project is located in Pahrump Valley, south of State Route 160 and adjacent to the Clark-Nye County line. The BLM completed the variance review for the Golden Currant Solar Project in January of this year and has initiated the environmental planning required by the National Environmental Policy Act, also known as NEPA. Input provided during the variance review will be carried forward into this NEPA process for the Golden Currant Solar Project. These virtual scoping meetings, along with the scoping period that will be open until June 9th, 2023, are part of the first steps of the NEPA process. During scoping, BLM asks for comments and input on the proposed project to better understand potential issues and concerns, as well as develop a reasonable range of alternatives to the proposed action. The presentation tonight is intended to inform all of you of the project details, such as the type of solar facility, location, size, timeline, and issues already identified through the variance review. We will explain the NEPA process and what kind of information will be most helpful during the scoping period. So before we begin, I wanted to make sure everyone knows that we are still in the very early stages of the NEPA process, so we may not have all the answers to your in-depth or specific questions. We will work hard to provide answers to your questions later in this meeting, but please know that even hearing your questions will help us better understand what needs to be analyzed. Before we begin with the presentation, I would like to introduce you to the speakers today. Jessica Heaton is the BLM project manager for the Golden Currant Solar Project, and she will be providing an overview presentation on the project as well as the NEPA process. Jessica is also joined by other BLM staff members who are shown on the screen and are working behind the scenes to help answer your questions later in the meeting. So at this time, I'd like to turn it back over to Caitlin to go over tonight's meeting format.
Thank you, Katrina. Tonight's forum will provide opportunities for questions and public comment. There will be a question and answer session where written questions can be submitted. There will also be an opportunity for verbal public comment toward the end of the scoping meeting. We'll have more information on these two opportunities later on. Comments and questions can be submitted via the Participate Now button on ePlanning, email to the email address on the screen, or via mail to the BLM Southern Nevada District Office. We will also provide this information in the chat for this forum. As mentioned on this slide, before including your address, phone number, email address, or other personal identifying information in your comment, you should be aware that your entire comment, including your personal identifying information, may be publicly available at any time. While you can ask that your personal identifying information be withheld from public review, the BLM cannot guarantee that they will be able to do so. Anonymity is not allowed for submissions from organizations or businesses and from individuals identifying themselves as representatives or officials of organizations or businesses. Now Jessica will present an overview on the Golden Currant Solar Project, as well as the BLM completed variance process and the ongoing environmental compliance process.
Apologies. Thank you, Caitlin. Noble Solar LLC has submitted a right-of-way application for the Golden Currant Solar Project. The right-of-way request is to utilize public land in Clark County for the construction, operation, and eventual decommissioning of a proposed solar facility and interconnection to the regional transmission system. The proposed project is a 400 megawatt photovoltaic solar facility with battery storage located on approximately 4,456 acres of BLM administered lands, 5 miles southeast of the town of Pahrump and 26 miles west of Las Vegas. The Golden Currant Solar Project is located in a variance area and was subject to the variance process defined in the 2012 Western Solar Plan. In January 2023, the BLM completed the variance process and determined it was appropriate to continue processing the application and initiate NEPA review for the project. The map on the screen shows the proposed solar facility in red near the Nevada-California border. The proposed generation tie line in green runs northeast of the project parallel to Tacoma Road to the existing Trout Canyon substation shown as the black box on the top right of the map. The Trout Canyon substation was approved with the Yellow Pine project and construction of the substation was completed in 2022. The map shows the location of the proposed Golden Currant Solar Project in relation to local roads and streets within the Pahrump area, including Old Spanish Trail Road, Front Sight Road, Tacoma Springs Road, Old Route 16, State Highway 160, and Cathedral Canyon. As described earlier, Noble Solar LLC is applying for a right-of-way to construct, own, operate, and decommission the proposed project consisting of up to 400 megawatt alternating current solar photovoltaic power generating facility and 400 megawatt battery energy storage system. The project will be located on approximately 4,456 acres of Bureau of Land Management administered land. The right-of-way application contains a larger area than required for the solar field to allow for adjustments in the facility layout to minimize environmental impacts based on the National Environmental Policy Act, also referred to as NEPA analysis. The right-of-way is being proposed to accommodate temporary and permanent ground disturbances for the construction of the 400 megawatt AC photovoltaic solar facility and BESS with access roads, solar fields, and gen tie line extending from the project substation to the Trout Canyon 230 kV substation. On the screen, you'll see a preliminary site layout for the proposed solar project. The preliminary site layout reflects planned avoidances of some drainage and topographical features within the site boundary. Note that as a result of resource information gained from studies and reports, the project sponsor has indicated that an updated plan of development and site layout will be submitted soon. The project sponsor has indicated that the updated plan of development will include a site layout with additional avoidance areas to minimize potential impacts to resources. Following submittal and BLM review, the BLM will post the updated plan of development to the project web page. The BLM is also considering a resource management plan amendment to modify 2 utility corridors that intersect the Golden Currant Solar Project boundary. This resource management plan amendment would be considered during the planning process. The map on the slide shows the project boundary in red and the 2 utility corridors that intersect the project area. These utility corridors include a west-wide energy corridor designated under Section 368 of the Energy Policy Act of 2005, shown in yellow, and the utility corridor designated by the 1998 Las Vegas Resource Management Plan, shown in orange. The flow chart on the screen shows the application evaluation process, which begins with the submittal of a solar project application. The application is then prioritized based on the regulations and involves interdisciplinary team review. This helps the BLM prioritize and process the solar application workload more efficiently. After prioritization, and based on the priority determined, the BLM considers adding the application to the plan of work and initiating the solar application evaluation process. This includes the variance process, which we will discuss in more detail later. The application evaluation and the variance process involves public information forums and agency coordination. When the evaluation is complete, the BLM determines whether to continue to process the application. In January 2023, BLM determined to continue processing the Golden Currant Solar Project application, initiate the NEPA process, including analysis and public involvement. These public scoping meetings for the Golden Currant Solar Project are part of the NEPA process. The variance process is part of the application evaluation process described in the BLM right-of-way regulations. The variance process focuses on collection and evaluation of resource data with input from the public, tribes, and federal, state, and local governments. This input and evaluation of data helped BLM to assess the appropriateness of the solar proposal. In July 2022, the BLM hosted 2 virtual public information forums and an agency meeting with federal, state, local, and tribal governments to gather public input. The information gathered during the meeting and the input period were reviewed and summarized for the project. Issues identified from the input period will be carried forward into the NEPA process for the project. Additionally, BLM sent letters to Native American tribes to assess initial interest on the project and invite the tribes to initiate formal government-to-government consultation. Tribal consultation with 15 tribes is ongoing. Additional information on the variance process for the Golden Currant Solar Project can be found at the webpage. The flow chart on the screen shows the NEPA process for the Golden Currant Solar Project. The NEPA process begins with the publication of a notice of intent announcing the intentions of the BLM to complete an environmental impact statement, and in this case, for this project, a resource management plan amendment. The notice of intent for the project was published on April 25th, 2023, which initiates the public scoping period. The scoping period will end June 9, 2023. The scoping meeting tonight is included in this step in the NEPA process. After scoping, the BLM reviews the comments provided, generates issues to analyze, identifies any suggested alternatives, and develops the draft environmental impact statement and draft resource management plan amendment. The draft environmental impact statement for the project and resource management plan amendment are published for a 90-day public review period, initiated by the publication of a notice of availability. Comments submitted during the public review period are reviewed and substantive comments are responded to in the final EIS and proposed resource management plan amendment. The final EIS and proposed resource management plan amendment are made available for 30 days with publication of a notice of availability. During the availability period, there will be a concurrent 30-day protest period and Nevada Governor's consistency review of the final EIS and proposed resource management plan. If protests are received, they are responded to, and if no additional changes to the documents are necessary, then BLM would issue a record of decision for the environmental impact statement and approval of the resource management plan amendment, which, if the project is approved, BLM would proceed with issuance of a right-of-way grant. Here listed on this slide are the preliminary resource concerns identified during the variance process. Recreation, including off-highway vehicle use and access to public lands, visual resources, Old Spanish National Historic Trail, cultural and tribal resources, wildlife and vegetation, social economics, property values, public health and safety, and water resources. Here is a table of the status of technical studies and reports. As appropriate, some reports, such as the Desert Tortoise Survey report, may be made available on the project website once BLM determines they are complete. Next, we will discuss and identify preliminary resource concerns in more details. For the wildlife and vegetation, identified issues include special status wildlife, including desert tortoises, wildlife habitat, and sensitive vegetation, desert pavement, and soils. BLM will be consulting with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service for Section 7 Endangered Species Act consultation, as well as the Nevada Department of Wildlife. Technical studies to be performed include the desert tortoise and botanical surveys. For visual resources and recreations, issues identified include protection of visual resources in the project area and views from surrounding communities, off-highway vehicle use and loss of public land in the area, non-motorized recreation and camping, and access to public lands for recreation and business purposes. Required studies that we intend to see are visual resource technical reports with simulations and off-highway vehicle trail use data collection. Issues identified for National Historic Trail cultural and historical resources include Old Spanish National Historic Trail, the grave of Cujo, and Cathedral Canyon, and of course, impacts to spiritual lands. The BLM will be consulting with the State Historic Preservation Office under Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act, as well as continuing ongoing tribal consultation. Technical reports include Cultural Resource Report and the BLM Manual 6280 Inventory and Impact Analysis for the Old Spanish National Historic Trail. Socioeconomics property values. Issues identified include loss of property value and impacts to local economics and job creation. Technical reports required will include the economic modeling and social economic report. Public health and safety. Issues identified include dust pollution and fine particulate matter, climate change issues, and impacts to local economics and job creation. Air quality technical reports will be required. For water resources, issues identified include quantity and source of water for construction, effects on existing water resources and supply, stormwater, and sedimentation. The BLM will be consulting with Clark County Permitting, U.S. Army Corps of Engineering for the Section 404 of the Clean Water Act permit. Technical reports expected include the water supply and use report and the drainage study. The Golden Currant Solar Project, encircled in a red outline, is the project we are discussing tonight. The Copper Ray Solar Project in the gray and the Rough Hat Clark Solar Project in bright blue have already held their individual NEPA scoping meetings. The La Rea Solar Project, shown in fuchsia, and the Mosey Solar Project, shown in lavender, were prioritized but not been scheduled for initiation of application evaluation yet. The Rough Hat Nye County Solar Project in green is currently paused. Several other cumulative solar projects are proposed on the California side of the valley, including Bonanza Peak Solar, proposed on private lands with the generation tie line proposed on BLM administered lands in Nevada, and the proposed Sunbake and Borderline solar project applications. Also on the screen, you'll see the location of the approved Yellow Pine Solar Project shown in yellow, which was authorized with a record of decision in the fall of 2020 and is currently under construction. After the public scoping meetings have concluded, we will continue to gather comments on the project until June 9, 2023. The information we gather will be considered in the draft environmental impact statement, which is anticipated in the winter of 2023. More information can be found on the project webpage. Helpful input and information from you would include how to refine the solar project to avoid or reduce impacts to natural resources, plants, wildlife, soils, landscape views, and recreation, OHV trails, horseback riding, target shooting. We will also appreciate input on reasonable alternatives to solar projects as currently proposed and alignments for the utility corridors and specific issues and concerns for the BLM to evaluate in detail. Comments identifying other past, present, or foreseeable future human activities in the area that are also causing or will cause impacts to natural resources, landscape views, or recreation would also be helpful. At this time, I'm going to turn the meeting back over to Caitlin, who will begin the question and answer session.
Thank you, Jessica. That concludes the presentation. We will now have a question and answer section on the Golden Currant Solar Project. Questions can be submitted using the question and answer box by following the instructions on this slide. At the bottom of your screen, you should see a Q&A feature to submit questions. Please understand that some questions will be answered live during this question and answer session, while some may be answered in writing in the Q&A feature. Anyone can see all of the questions answered in the chat by clicking on the Show All button. As questions begin to come in, I will facilitate asking the questions as the project manager, Jessica Heaton, will answer them. Thank you for your patience as we're waiting for the questions to come in and be organized. Okay, we have our first question. What about the west-wide energy corridor that intersects the project boundary?
As I mentioned during the presentation, a west-wide energy corridor does intersect the proposed Golden Currant Solar Project, as well as a utility corridor designated by the 1998 RMP. As such, the BLM is considering a RMP amendment to modify both utility corridors that intersect with the Golden Currant Solar Project area. This resource management plan amendment would be considered during this planning process.
While we're waiting for questions to come in, I just wanted to remind everyone that the scoping period is through June 9th, 2023. After this meeting, you will be able to continue to provide comments in writing to the BLM via email or mail. Thank you, everyone, for your patience as we're waiting for questions to come in. New question. How would the project impact Pahrump?
Thank you. Based on input received during the Golden Currant Solar Project variance process, the BLM will be considering the effect of the project on local community economics through the environmental review. The applicant is working to develop modeling and prepare an economic modeling report to support the analysis of the topic. The analysis and economic modeling report will be available for review and comment during the review and comment period of the draft environmental impact statement and the proposed resource management plan amendment.
Thank you everyone for your patience. As a reminder, while we wait, you will also be able to comment using the Participate Now button on e-planning via email or mail to the BLM Southern Nevada District Office through June 9th, 2023. Thank you everyone for your patience as we're getting the questions organized. New questions come in. How much additional infrastructure, such as roads and power lines, will this project take?
Thank you, Caitlin. A plan of development reflects the requested acreage for the Golden Currant Solar Project area is approximately 4,456 acres. The acres includes the proposed Gentie transmission line, auxiliary facilities, and access roads. An actual breakdown of what is where we would have to provide that information.
Thank you everyone for your patience as we're waiting for the questions to be organized. And just as a reminder, the scoping period runs through June 9th, 2023. And there are several ways to provide comments, including on e-planning, via email or mail. A new question has come in. Front Site Road, is it going to be altered or removed?
Thank you, Caitlin. The project is not currently proposing to remove or alter Front Site Road.
Another question. What advantage, if any, does Pahrump residents receive from this project, with the exception of it depleting our water while sending non-24-hour power elsewhere?
Thank you. Based on the input received during the Golden Currant Solar Project variance process, the BLM will be considering the effect of the project on local community economics through the environmental review. As we mentioned before, the applicant is working to develop modeling and prepare an economic modeling report to support the analysis of that topic. And the analysis of the economic modeling report again, will be available for review and comment during the draft environmental impact statement and the proposed resource management plan amendment.
Thank you, everyone, for your patience as we're waiting for the questions to be organized. A new question. How many acres in the 4,400 acre right-of-way would actually be developed and how many avoided?
Thank you. The BLM has received a preliminary plan of development for the project that describes initial plans for the site layout. Again, that information can be found on the Golden Currant Solar Project webpage provided in the chat earlier during the presentation.
Cathedral Canyon Road, is it going to be modified?
The project is not currently proposing to modify Cathedral Canyon Road.
Jessica, would you mind repeating that for the audience?
I apologize. Is it coming through clearer now? Okay. The project is not currently proposing to modify Cathedral Canyon Road.
Thank you.
I apologize for the delay.
A reminder to everyone while we're waiting for the questions to be organized, that the scoping period will run through June 9th, 2023. And after this meeting, you will be able to provide comments in writing to the BLM via email or mail, or you may go onto e-planning and comment using the Participate Now function. Thank you, everyone, for your patience. New question. Will there be an alternative analyzed that looks at expanding recreation that is lost?
Thank you so much for the question. The scoping process will help BLM identify alternatives to the proposed action and resource issues for analysis. We have not developed alternatives at this time, so comments suggesting reasonable alternatives to the solar project as currently proposed are appreciated. Some examples of alternatives that have been considered for other recent projects include modification to site preparation, vegetation retention, limited grading, previously referred to as mowing, changes to facility locations within the project area, and so forth.
Another question. How would construction impact old growth Mojave yucca, some of which are 12 feet high and more?
Thank you. Noble Solar LLC is proposing to utilize the disc and roll technique, would be used generally to prepare the surface of the solar field for post and PV panel installation. In areas where the terrain is not suitable for disc and roll, conventional cut and fill grading would be used. Most yucca would be impacted with this construction technique. Through the NEPA process, project design features, mitigation measures, or other action alternatives that address vegetation management may be developed and analyzed. Even if an alternative were to be selected that retain vegetation, there would be more impacts to yucca in particular due to their height.
What locations can you move the WW Energy Corridor to that do not now have solar applications?
Thank you. The BLM is currently seeking input from the public during the scoping period on potential realignments to maintain connectivity for the corridor outside of the project boundary. One possible option would be to realign the corridor to parallel State Route 160 until it passes the proposed solar development area.
Thank you, everyone, for your patience as we're working to organize the questions. Just as a reminder, while we wait, that you are able to comment using the Participate Now button on e-planning by email or mail to the BLM Southern Nevada District Office through June 9th, 2023. The mowing technique to cut yucca, creosote, cactus, and other plants down to 2 feet was not used at Yellow Pine, even though Kiewit Construction was supposed to do that. Would the land clearing on Golden Currant site be different, and how so?
Thank you. The mowing was used to cut down vegetation on site within the Yellow Pine site. Repeated travel over vegetation created higher than anticipated impacts to vegetation. The Southern Nevada District is working on standardizing the best management practices for vegetation management during construction and operation and maintenance of the solar facilities, which would, for future projects, include a standard for vegetation density post-construction.
New question. The Wolfenstein Estate in Pahrump sold water rights to Yellow Pine Solar. Does Noble Solar have any alternative to using water in the Pahrump Valley? What alternative water resources do they have?
Thank you so much. The project sponsor is currently working on identifying potential sources of water that could be utilized for project development. There is not specific information available on the water source at this time.
In the April 2023 PowerPoint, the acreage given was 2,400, not 4,456 acres. Which is correct?
Thank you. The currently proposed acreage for the Golden Currant Solar Project is 4,456 acres.
Another question. How will flowering yucca, flowering creosote, flowering cactus, and the local bee populations they support be impacted by the Golden Currant Project?
Thank you. The potential impacts to yucca, creosote, cacti, and pollinators, including bees, would be analyzed during the NEPA process.
Question. Where is the power actually going?
Thank you. The project sponsor, Noble Solar, has indicated that a purchaser for the proposed power to be generated from the project site has not been identified yet. The Golden Currant Solar Project proposes to interconnect to the Trout Canyon substation, which would allow power to be provided to the California Independent System Operator and NV Energy Systems.
Thank you everyone for your patience as we're waiting for the questions to be organized. How would the unavoidable destruction of old growth Mojave yucca be mitigated by Noble Solar?
Mitigation measures for impacts to vegetation, including Mojave yucca, will be developed during the NEPA process. Again, if you have suggestions for potential mitigation measures that could be developed, we welcome your input.
As we're waiting for the questions to be organized, just want to remind everybody that the scoping period is through June 9th, 2023, and that there are other opportunities to provide comment, including on e-planning, by email or mail. Thank you again, everybody, for your patience. Just wanted to let everybody know that we're working hard to respond to all the questions. And while we are hoping to respond to as many live as possible. We will also be answering them throughout the evening in the question and answer box. Thank you. New question. Would moving the west-wide energy corridor next to Highway 160 place it in a higher visual class?
Thank you. The visual resource management class next to Highway 160 is class 3. The Western Wide Energy Corridor currently crosses both visual resource management class 3 and 4 in this area.
Another question. We have 10 million acres of parking lots and millions of acres of alfalfa fields that will soon go to fallow in California. Why are those not being developed first instead of irreplaceable wilderness?
Unfortunately, the BLM is required by law to respond to applications filed on BLM managed lands and has no authority or influence over the installation of project on lands other than BLM managed public lands. Through the environmental review process, BLM will consider various alternatives to the proposed action, which are gathered through the scoping period in coordination with other federal, state, and local governments and tribes. The environmental impact statement analysis will carry forward reasonable alternatives for a detailed analysis and describe in detail those alternatives that were considered but eliminated from detailed analysis. During the scoping process, the BLM seeks input on reasonable alternatives and the proposed action. As alternatives should resolve a problem with the proposed action and address the purpose and need of the project, please indicate the purpose of the suggested alternative. In addition, the BLM requests and the identification of potential issues that should be analyzed. Issues should be result of the proposed action or alternatives. Therefore, please identify the activity along with the potential issues.
What effect will the 40 square mile cumulative development in this valley have on migrating birds that mistake it for a lake?
As I mentioned in the presentation, the BLM is coordinating with the Fish and Wildlife Service, a Migratory Board Office, to issue related to migratory bird species. Their input will be incorporated into the NEPA document. Additionally, if you have more information about impacts of solar panels on migratory birds, please submit the information to us as part of the scoping process.
Will some of the Badlands topography on the west side of the project need to be flattened? It has a number of Badlands that do not seem flat enough for solar panels. Will that result in a fine, silty dust?
The project sponsor is evaluating what construction methods would be necessary for developing solar energy project at the site. They have applied for a right-of-way requesting to conduct geotechnical investigations to inform and refine the project site plan.
Thank you, everyone, for your patience as we're waiting for the questions to be organized. How would the Golden Currant Solar impact public use of hiking and ATV trails on the site?
The BLM is working to gather information on recreation use and trails within and adjacent to the project area. This includes scoping comments that provide information about current recreation use within and adjacent to the proposed project, and suggestions for mitigating potential impacts to recreation in the area. This information will be utilized for the environmental impact statement analysis, which will be available for review and comment at the draft EIS statement and resource management plan.
Will Cathedral Canyon Road be used as an access road for the project? How will this affect public access?
Thank you. Noble Solar is proposing to utilize State Route 160 and Tacoma Springs Road for access entrance into the proposed Golden Currant Solar Project. Again, additional information on the project can be found in the preliminary plan of development on the e-plan on the project webpage in the chat.
Will Front Site Road be used as an access road for the project up to the Nye County line? How many miles long Front Site Road is that?
Yeah, again, Noble Solar is proposing to utilize State Route 160 and Tacoma Springs Road for access entrance. And again, you can find the information on the e-planning page on the website in the preliminary plan of development.
Has Golden Currant received a permit from the Nevada Division of Water Resources?
Thank you. A permit for the Nevada Division of Water Resources has not been issued at this time. The project applicant has indicated that water would be purchased from a commercial source or existing water rights owners. It would then be trucked or piped to the project site where it would be stored in an on-site water storage tank. The applicant would engage best practices for the project and is committed to complying with all regulations, coordinating with the Nevada State Engineer, and implementing other measures to ensure groundwater basin integrity. Again, comments submitted during the variance input period indicated concerns for water use and identified water source. These concerns will be carried forward and analyzed during the environmental analysis for the project. Additionally, the BLM will consider cumulative impacts for the proposed project water use on other connected resources. And the BLM considers water, both surface and groundwater, within the broader context of all resources on BLM administrator lands and their interactions as they related to BLM responsibilities.
What does the BLM suggest as mitigation for the tens of thousands of yucca, hundreds of thousands of creosote, and carbon sequestering biological crust that would be destroyed on the Golden Currant Solar site?
The Southern Nevada District is working on standardizing best management practices for vegetation management during construction and operation and maintenance of solar facilities in order to have consistency between project analysis. Alternatives to the proposed action could be analyzed that retain some of these species on site. There's little that can be done to mitigate impacts to most vegetation species off-site.
The Yellow Pine Solar Project power is being sold to Silicon Valley and Monterey Bay in California because California pays more for electricity than Nevada. Would Noble Solar sell the electricity to the utility which pays the most?
The project sponsor has indicated that a purchaser for the power proposed to be generated from the project site has not been identified yet. Again, the Golden Currant Solar Project proposes to interconnect to the Trout Canyon substation. So the power could be provided to the California Independent System Operator and NV Energy Systems.
While we're waiting for questions to be organized, I just want to remind everybody that the scoping period is through June 9th, 2023. And after this meeting, you may provide comments to the BLM by email or mail or on e-planning. New question. Megafauna fossils have been found at both Stump Springs and Cathedral Canyon. Do you think these fossils could be under the Golden Currant site? It is just a mile away.
Thank you. The potential impacts to paleontological resources from the proposed project development will be evaluated in the environmental review. Submittal during scoping of information about potential resources in the vicinity of the proposed project would be very helpful.
What is the long-term hazmat disposal plan requirement?
Thank you. The equipment from the Golden Currant Solar Project, including solar panels, will be recycled and or disposed of in accordance with all applicable federal, state, and local laws.
Thank you everyone for your patience. Another question, does NV Energy serve Pahrump or only Clark County?
NV Energy serves Clark County. Valley Electric Association is the service provider for Pahrump.
How would Noble Solar mitigate the dust hazard caused by mowing, grading, and driving over native soils?
Thank you. As part of the environmental review process, design features or mitigation measures would be identified to minimize or reduce potential effects to air quality, including dust control measures from the proposed project and identified alternatives. Noble Solar has also identified dust control measures in the preliminary plan of development. Again, you guys can find that on the e-planning webpage provided in the chat.
What will the required fossil survey involve, and what parts of the site will be surveyed for fossils?
The BLM is currently evaluating if a paleontological resource survey will be required. If a survey is required, surveys will follow standard survey protocols.
Thank you. At this point, we will conclude our live question and answer session. But as a reminder, there will be, if you put any questions in the Q&A box, they can be answered throughout the evening. We'll now transition onto the verbal input section. We will not be answering questions live, as I just noted, but if you have any additional questions, you can continue to drop those into the Q&A box and we will respond in writing, or you can email or mail any remaining questions to the BLM. As a reminder, anyone can see all the questions answered in the chat using the Show All button. We are going to take verbal input following the order in which people pre-registered and said yes or maybe to wanting to provide public comments. Please use the raise hand feature at the bottom of the screen if you are on a computer, and the facilitator will open your microphone. If you are on a phone, you can raise your hand with *9 and then unmute and mute using *6. You will see a 2-minute timer on the next slide, and this will display the amount of time you have for your public comment. We are reserving 2 minutes per public comment input. Your input will be included in the public project record. After going through the list of people who pre-registered to speak, we'll move on to anyone who may want to provide input that did not identify that they wanted to provide comments when they registered. The BLM wants to hear from all the members of the public. However, out of respect for everyone's participation and input, we do ask that you follow these guidelines. Please stay within your allotted time. On the slide, you will see as the time is running out. We ask that you watch this and be cognizant of that and wrap up your comment. Please be respectful of others that are speaking. Please refrain from profanity. If these guidelines are not followed, your microphone will be muted and we will have to move on to the next person. Let's get started on the verbal public comment. Up first, we have Michael Fender. You could please raise your hand and we will unmute your microphone.
There?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. We good to go? I have a text here that I've prepared for this evening. Anyway, so what is the purpose of the BLM? To all my listeners out there and to the BLM folks, its mission is to sustain health, diversity, and productivity of public lands for the use of and enjoyment of present and future generation. That's just a reminder of what their goal is. This time it's the Golden Currant Project, about 4,500 acres. It was yellow pine at 3,000 acres. What's next? Mosey at 5,200 acres, Rough Hat at 2,400, and even Cathedral at 1,005. And then we can't forget about Frontera, Sunbaked, and Bonanza along the California-Nevada border. There's roughly 16,000 acres of solar panels possibly going to extend to all the way to the Tacoma Road off of Highway 160. If you were to look at this group of solar farms on a map, and all you'll see is a cordoned off area fenced off of public lands, it'd be about 15 miles long from Pahrump Valley, which is only 35 miles long, and it's 18 to 25 miles wide. That's about half of the valley's width. What are you allowing is a fence that cuts Pahrump Valley in half, all within 4 miles of residences. So what have we learned about this? We know about the 2012 PEIS, we know about the solar energy zones, and we know about the variant zones. So again, why here? Could it be because our aquifer of 162, my drinking water? We are paying attention. These solar farms do not have to be this close to town. They do not have to be along major highways creating an eyesore, glare, or dust to drivers. They do not have to be close to water resources. We know this now. We are standing up for our health and our well-being. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Up next, we have Joyce Barishman. If you could raise your hand and we will allow you to unmute your microphone. If you're on the phone, you can raise your hand with *9. If you want to comment later, we will come back around. Up next, we have Simone Griffin. If you could please raise your hand if you would like to comment, and we will unmute your microphone. We will circle around. Up next, we have Caroline Logue. If you would like to comment, please raise your hand at this time, and we will allow you to unmute. As a reminder, if you are on the phone, you are able to raise your hand with *9. Great, we will move on to Kelly Hill. If you would like to comment, please raise your hand.
Yes, I'm here.
We can hear you.
Yes, I would just like to reiterate for the BLM to consider that this project manager wants to come into Pahump's backyard, take everything from us and give us nothing. I don't see how that is a win-win to anybody. That's all.
Thank you, Kelly. Right, up next, we have David Attaway. If you are interested still in commenting, please raise your hand and we will allow you to unmute yourself. Again, if you are one of the people on the phone, you can raise your hand with *9. There will be an opportunity later if you do want to come and comment later. So with that, we'll move on to Pat Flanagan. If you are interested in commenting verbally, please raise your hand at this time. All right, with that, we'll move on to Daniel R. Patterson. If you would like to verbally comment, please raise your hand and we will allow you to unmute your microphone. Or if you are one of the people on the phone, you can raise your hand with *9. Okay, with that, we'll move on to Shannon Salter. If you are still interested in commenting verbally, perfect.
Hello, good evening. Yeah, a couple of things that I wanted to point out. One is that all of the things that the BLM is talking about in terms of mitigation, like the mowing technique and techniques to mitigate dust, just simply don't work. I watched Yellow Pine Solar under construction, and the Kiewit construction and NextEra Energy were supposed to use the mowing technique. I guess now you have another term for it, and take the vegetation, i.e. ancient Mojave yucca, ancient creosote, rare cactus, etc., down to 2 feet, but they didn't do that. I mean, you can go out there and see it. They just simply didn't do that. They bulldozed it and just pulled the plants out. I have photos of them carting away yucca in trucks, and photos of them running over yucca and creosote and just pulling them out of the ground. So the root systems were not left intact, and none of the plant bottoms were not left intact. I don't know how much it matters. I don't think they can regenerate anyways after 30 years of being sprayed with herbicide. And the dust is just totally out of control at Yellow Pine. The project manager there told me that they're spraying 300,000 gallons per day during construction. And I mean, it's just laughable. You can go out there and see it. Dust is blowing all over the place. It's madness. And I want to clarify that the Wolfenstein estate sold the water in Pahrump to the Yellow Pine Solar, and it would most likely be the Wolfenstein estate that sells water to the Golden Currant Solar site and the Mosi Solar site and the Cathedral Canyon Solar site on the Clark County side. And the Pahrump Valley is totally over allocated. Those water rights exist, but the water does not exist. So if this happens, it would have serious repercussions for the water table in the Pahrump Valley.
Thank you, Shannon.
You're welcome.
All right. That will move on to Sam Davis. If you are interested still in providing a verbal comment, please raise your hand and we will allow you to unmute yourself. As a reminder, if you are one of the individuals on the phone, you can raise your hand with *9. Okay. Those are all of the people that we identified who pre-registered to speak tonight. As such, we'll now open the floor for anyone who did not pre-register who would like to speak. You can use your raise hand function and we will allow you to unmute yourself. I believe the first person I saw was Kevin Emmerich.
Hello, thank you. My organization is Basin and Range Watch, and I actually did register to speak, but this is okay. Yeah, anyway, thank you for having this meeting. The first comment I want to make is about paleontology, and there have been megafauna fossils, as I put a comment, found just a mile away in a formation that is actually the same geologic formation that's found on what I think is approximately 40% of this Golden Currant site. And so I do hope that you will survey for these fossils underneath the project site, because I think there's a possibility that you might find something significant. And it would be a shame if this developer would just pound holes in the ground just to place solar panels on a very non-renewable resource, paleontology. Another element is desert tortoise. Now, this area doesn't have as high a density as the yellow pine. It's a little bit lower, but I've read your survey report and you have maps of past desert tortoise burrows that are pretty uniform throughout the site. It's actually, we know that a tortoise will dig more than one burrow, but I mean, for crying out loud, they're just everywhere out there. And I think it might be a really good idea to consider that since a lot of them were killed off in a drought, that this kind of industrial use is kind of like a final nail in the coffin for the population. I do have a lot of other comments, and I'll try to do those when I have my next 2 minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kevin. Next person I saw, Laura Cunningham.
Hello. Oh, sorry, feedback. Laura Cunningham, Basin and Range Watch, and I back up what Kevin Emmerich said. 40% of this project, and we've walked it, are really big badland formations. It's not flat. And when the project applicant says they're going to disc and roll and grade, that's going to be an intensive earth moving activity on deep gullies, little mesas, badland formations. I mean, this is like, sounds like a very big earth moving project that will leave no mesquites or Mojave yuccas at all. And these badlands are actually paleo wetland deposits that are perhaps identical to Tule Springs Fossil Beds National Monument that are Pleistocene in age. And they have been found to contain fossils of mammoth. And these could have other things that are really important, like camel, extinct horse, saber-toothed cat, giant tortoise. I mean, there's so many interesting fossils that are being found in these paleo wetland deposits that I really recommend that you do thorough paleontological surveys before bulldozers and earth moving equipment comes in. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. If you would like to provide a verbal comment, you may raise your hand if you're on a computer. And as a reminder to those on the phone, you can raise your hand using *9. Great. Looks like I see Shannon Salter.
Yeah, I wanted to add another thing about cultural resources. First of all, this project site is right in the center of the Native American salt songs. And we know that this area was mentioned in particular in the salt songs because it contains all of the mesquite groves. And this is a traditional area where the Pahrump band of Paiutes and the Nuwu people gather mesquite pods for food and also medicine. And so I think that the Pahrump band of Paiute needs to be like more thoroughly consulted. I know that they're not a federally recognized tribe, so maybe they're not even being consulted. And so that's like one huge cultural resource, the whole area that's spreading out from Brown Springs and Stump Springs. There's really a lot of mesquite on the site. I've also walked the entire site, and there's, I mean, not only mesquite, but there's also yucca that are pretty much the tallest yucca that anybody's ever seen. There's yucca that are 12 feet tall and probably even taller than that. And I have photos of the yucca that I may have included in my first comments during the variance process, but I'm not sure. But, you know, it's really a tragedy and it just doesn't seem right. I get that the BLM has to respond to developer applications, but this isn't serving the public, and this isn't really serving anybody except for the developer, which in this case is Noble Solar. And I just think it's flat out wrong. And I'm interested in the types of mitigation that could be proposed. I don't know if mitigation is the developer, Noble Solar, needing to protect other areas, which should be the very least that they should have to do, and it should be a lot of area. But I'm interested.
Thank you. All right. Looks like I see Kevin Emmerich up next.
Hello, thank you again, Kevin Emmerich, Basin and Range Watch. I would have to ask, how much capacity is in that Trout Canyon substation. And how many of these projects can you actually permit to be built in that particular area? Because I mean, it was pointed out how many acres, like 25,000 acres are being slated for development. These projects are moving along. And in response to that, the BLM should really do a cumulative analysis of how much water in total all of these projects would use just for the construction dust over the period of time. I think it would be like 2,500 to 3,000 acre feet, just all of them put together. And the effect this would have on the declining desert tortoise, this project has a population density that's higher than most of the critical habitat units in 2023. Also moving that energy corridor, the plan amendment provides an opportunity. The old Spanish National Historic Trail has a 5-mile buffer that BLM points out as informal, but it's managed by the Park Service and the BLM, and it should be mitigated to a point where it shouldn't be developed at all, because that, along with the salt songs trail, represent cultural landscapes, and those cultural landscapes need to be preserved by preserving vast areas and landscapes of open space. And so it seems that you can't mitigate it. You really should look at an alternative that protects that corridor of the old Spanish Trail and really minimizes all of these solar applications within this particular region. It would be a conservation alternative. Thanks.
Thank you. If anybody would like to provide a verbal comment, please raise your hand and we will allow you to unmute yourself. If you are one of the people on the phone and you would like to raise your hand, you can use *9. Reminder that if you do want to provide verbal comment at this time, you can raise your hand, or if you're on the phone, you can do *9. There are also several other avenues by which you can provide comments, which I've mentioned before, on e-planning, via email or mail. It looks like those are all the people who asked to speak and provide a verbal comment at this time. And as a reminder, the scoping period will continue through June 9th, 2023. So you may provide comment via those methods that I mentioned up until that time. And we will be on until 8 o'clock. So you may provide any questions that you have in the Q&A function, or if you have comments, you may provide them up until that time. At this time, Katrina Williams will now do a brief closeout.
All right, well, thank you everyone that joined us for this meeting tonight. We really do appreciate your time and consideration for these projects. We've listened to all the comments tonight, and of course, they will all go on in the record as well and be used as consideration during the NEPA analysis process. And again, I just wanted to thank everyone who attended, and I hope you have a wonderful evening. And I wanted to let you know that we're going to go ahead and leave this slide up on the screen until we close the meeting, so that you have information on providing comments. So thank you and have a great evening.
As a reminder to everybody, we will be here until 8 p.m. So you may submit any questions that you have in the Q&A feature, or you can provide comment. a reminder to those of you still here, we will be here until 8. So if you have any questions, you can put them into the Q&A box, or if you have a comment, we'll be happy to hear them. Thank you. Just as a reminder, we will be here until 8 p.m. So you may submit any questions that you have into the Q&A box, or if you have a comment, we are here to record them. Thanks. Thank you everyone for being here. Just as a reminder, we are here until 8 p.m. So if you have any additional lingering questions at this moment, you may put them in the Q&A chat. Or if you'd like to comment, you may do so. Thanks. Just as a reminder, we're here until 8 p.m. So if you have any lingering questions at this moment, you may put them in the Q&A chat, or if you would like to comment, you may do so. Thank you. as a reminder, we will be here until 8. So if you have any questions that are lingering, please do submit them in the Q&A box. Or if you have a comment, we are ready to receive them. Thank you. Thank you everyone for being here tonight. We will be closing up right now for today's scoping meeting, but just as a reminder that the scoping period will continue through June 9th, 2023. And you can comment via email, sending in a hard copy comment to the BLM, or using the Participate Now button on the BLM website. Have a good night.